The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers for the third time, clattering against the concrete floor of my garage. Midnight wasn't exactly prime time for truck maintenance, but sleep had become a stranger these past few weeks. The old Ford's engine problems seemed easier to diagnose than whatever was eating away at my marriage. "Dad, you're pathetic." My daughter Madison's voice cut through the night air from the kitchen window above. "Mom says you're just taking up space now. She deserves a man who actually knows what to do with her." I wiped my hands on an oil-stained rag, letting that particular knife twist a little deeper. If Leah wanted a handyman, I had a fully stocked toolbox. If she wanted a lover, well, maybe she should have shopped at a better store than whatever discount rack she'd been browsing lately. The kitchen light flickered off, and I heard Madison's bedroom door slam upstairs. Another peaceful family evening in the Johnson household. I'd built my construction business from nothing, working 16-hour days to give them everything they wanted. Now, Leah's paralegal career had transformed into some hotshot lawyer trajectory, and suddenly I was the anchor dragging down her shiny new life. My phone buzzed against the workbench. A text from Leah. "Extending my girls' trip by a week. Don't wait up." I stared at that message for a long moment, my mind absorbing what my instincts had been warning me about for months. Girls' trip, of course. The same girls' trip that seemed to happen every other weekend recently, always accompanied by vague details in spots where her phone never had reception. My fingers moved across the screen before my brain could stop them. "Take your time. My attorney finds these stories fascinating." The response was immediate. My phone rang so fast I almost dropped it. "What attorney? What are you talking about?" Leah's voice had that sharp edge it got when she was cornered in court. "Just making conversation, sweetheart. Enjoy your trip." I hung up and went back to my truck, but the wrench felt steadier in my hands now. Funny how a little honesty could improve your grip on things. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The phone rang 6 more times in the next hour. I let every call go to voicemail. Cedar Bluff had always been the kind of town where everyone knew everyone else's business, which made keeping secrets both impossible and absolutely essential. The old factory jobs had dried up years ago, leaving behind a collection of dive bars, gossip networks, and people who had nothing better to do than watch their neighbors' lives fall apart. I'd grown up here, married my high school sweetheart here, and built my business here. Leah had bigger dreams. She'd made that crystal clear when she started law school at 35, talking about expanding our horizons and reaching our full potential. Apparently, my potential had peaked somewhere around installing kitchen cabinets and fixing leaky roofs. The next morning, I decided to do some investigating of my own. Our joint checking account told an interesting story once I started paying attention. Small withdrawals, always in cash, always on days when Leah claimed to be working late or out with the girls. Hotel charges in the next town over. Restaurants I'd never been to. I printed everything out and spread it across my kitchen table like evidence at a crime scene. 17 years of marriage, and I was finally learning to read between the lines. Madison wandered downstairs around noon, her phone permanently attached to her hand like some kind of digital appendage. "Where's Mom?" she asked, not looking up from her screen. "Still on her trip? You know, bonding with the girls?" "Whatever. Can you drive me to Ashley's later?" "Sure thing, princess, right after you explain why you think your old man is so pathetic." That got her attention. She looked up from her phone with those sharp blue eyes she'd inherited from her mother. "I didn't mean anything by it." "Of course you didn't. Just like your mom doesn't mean anything when she rolls her eyes every time I walk into a room." Madison shifted uncomfortably. "You guys are weird lately." "Weird how?" "I don't know. Like she's always texting someone and you're always in the garage. It's like you're both here but not really here, you know?" Smart kid. Too smart, maybe. I wondered what else she'd noticed that I'd been too blind to see. My phone buzzed with another text from Leah. "Can we talk when I get home? I think we need to clear the air." I showed the message to Madison. "What do you think? Should I clear the air with your mother?" She read it and shrugged. "I guess, but maybe don't be so weird about it." I'll try to contain my weirdness. That afternoon, I drove over to Rudy's boxing gym, the one place in town where I could still throw a punch without getting arrested. Rudy had been training fighters for 40 years, and his gym looked like it hadn't been updated since the Carter administration. Cracked leather bags, duct-taped mats, and the permanent smell of sweat and determination. "You look like someone stole your lunch money," Rudy said, wrapping my hands with practiced efficiency. Something like that. I started working the heavy bag, letting each punch carry a little more frustration than the last. "Woman trouble?" Is it that obvious? Brother, I've seen more marriages explode in this gym than I've seen fights. Men come in here when they don't know where else to go. I told him about the texts, the money, the convenient girls' trips. Rudy listened without judgment, occasionally nodding like he'd heard the story 1,000 times before. Here's the thing, he said when I finished. You can fight fair or you can fight smart. Fair gets you a moral victory and a lonely apartment. Smart gets you results. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting you stop playing defense and start thinking like a boxer. You don't win by taking punches. You win by making the other guy miss, then counterpunching when he's off balance. I worked the bag for another hour, thinking about counterpunches and off-balance opponents. When I got home, there was a car in my driveway I didn't recognize, a silver sedan with rental plates. Through the kitchen window, I could see Leah sitting at our table with someone I couldn't quite make out. They were leaning close together, her hand on his arm, both of them laughing at something on her phone. I sat in my truck for a moment, watching my wife with another man in my own kitchen, and felt something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Not anger, exactly. More like clarity. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your wife wanted me to let you know she'll be staying at a friend's place tonight. No need to wait up. I stared at that message, then at the 2 figures in my kitchen window, and started laughing. Not because anything was funny, but because sometimes laughter is the only alternative to screaming. I walked into my own house like a visitor, keys jingling loud enough to announce my arrival. The kitchen fell silent. Hey there, I said, looking at the man sitting at my table. I don't think we've been introduced. He was younger than me, better dressed, with the kind of confident smile that came from never having to fix his own truck. I'm Eli, Leah's colleague from the firm. Colleague, right. I opened my refrigerator and grabbed a drink, taking my time. Funny thing about colleagues, usually they meet at the office. We were just discussing a case, Leah said quickly. Must be some case. Important enough to discuss during your girls' trip. The silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. Eli shifted in his chair, his confidence flickering like a candle in the wind. I should probably get going, he said. Probably should, I agreed. Drive safe. These country roads can be tricky if you don't know where you're going. After he left, Leah and I sat across from each other at the same table where we'd shared 17 years of meals, arguments, and quiet moments. Now it felt like a negotiating table. We need to talk, she said. I'm listening. Things haven't been good between us for a while. Define a while. She sighed, running her fingers through her hair. I don't know, months, maybe longer. We're like strangers living in the same house. Strangers don't usually share bank accounts and mortgages. You know what I mean? Actually, I don't. Why don't you spell it out for me? She looked toward the window, anywhere but at me. I think we want different things now. I'm growing, changing, and I'm what? You're the same person you were in high school. There it was. The truth she'd been dancing around for months, delivered with surgical precision. I was the same person who'd loved her since we were 17, who'd worked myself into the ground to build the life she wanted, who'd supported her dreams even when they started pulling her away from mine. So what are you suggesting? I asked. Maybe we should take some time apart, figure out what we really want. And Eli? Where does he fit into this self-discovery journey? Her cheeks flushed. This isn't about Eli. Right, just like your girls' trip wasn't about girls. We stared at each other across that table, and I realized our marriage had been over for months. I just hadn't been invited to the funeral. I'll pack some things, she said finally. Take your time. I'll be in the garage. I walked out of my own kitchen, leaving my wife to pack up 17 years like it was a weekend bag. Outside, Mrs. Greeley was watering her flowers, pretending not to watch the drama unfold next door. She'd have the whole story spread across town by morning, probably with creative embellishments. My phone buzzed. Another text from that unknown number. Hope you enjoyed the show. This is just the beginning. I looked up at my house, where lights were moving from room to room as Leah gathered her things, and realized someone was playing games with all of us. The question was who and what they wanted. But as Rudy had said, I was done playing defense. Time to start throwing some counterpunches of my own. 3 days after Leah moved out, Cedar Bluff's gossip network had already tried and convicted me in the court of public opinion. Apparently, I was either a controlling husband who drove his wife away or a clueless fool who couldn't keep his woman satisfied. The truth, as usual, was somewhere in between and far more complicated than anyone wanted to acknowledge. I was replacing a broken window at the Henderson place when my business partner Ray pulled up in his truck, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. We need to talk, he said, climbing out with the slow movements of a man carrying bad news. Let me guess. The Hendersons want to cancel the kitchen renovation. Among others? Ray had been my partner for 8 years, and I'd never seen him this uncomfortable. Word's getting around that you and Leah are having problems. Some folks are worried about stability. Stability. I set down my hammer and turned to face him. You mean they're worried I'll have a breakdown and install their cabinets crooked? Come on, man. You know how this town works. People talk, and talk becomes truth, whether it's accurate or not. He was right, of course. In Cedar Bluff, reputation was currency, and mine was apparently experiencing inflation. If I had $1 for every whispered conversation that stopped when I walked into Murphy's Hardware or the post office, I could afford to buy out Leah's lawyer's retainer. How bad is it? The Morrison job is on hold. The new subdivision contract is under review, and the Palmers want to discuss adjusting the timeline on their deck project. 3 jobs representing about $40,000 in revenue, all suddenly uncertain because my wife decided to upgrade her personal life. I'd spent 15 years building a reputation as the most reliable contractor in town, and it was evaporating faster than morning dew. What do you think I should do? Ray kicked at a loose stone, buying time. Maybe take a vacation. Let things cool down. I can handle the current projects. A vacation. I picked up my hammer and drove a nail with more force than necessary. Right, because running away always solves everything. I'm just saying. I know what you're saying, and I appreciate the concern, but I'm not going anywhere. That evening, I drove over to Rudy's gym, hoping to work off some frustration on the heavy bag. Instead, I found myself listening to the old trainer's philosophy on fighting smart versus fighting fair. Thing about a good counterpunch, Rudy said, adjusting my stance, is timing. You don't throw it when you're angry. You throw it when your opponent is off balance and can't see it coming. And how do I know when that is? You watch, you wait, you learn their patterns. He tapped his temple with a gnarled finger. Boxing is chess, not checkers. Every move sets up the next one. I spent an hour working combinations, thinking about patterns and timing. When I got home, Madison was in the kitchen, heating up leftover pizza and scrolling through her phone with the focused intensity of a scholar studying ancient texts. "How's your mother?" I asked. "Fine, I guess. She's staying at Aunt Cassie's place." Cassie. Leah's best friend since college, the one who'd been encouraging her to spread her wings and explore her options for the past year. Cassie, who'd worked for my company briefly 3 years ago before I'd had to let her go for consistently showing up late and spending more time on personal calls than actual work. Has she mentioned when she might come home? Madison looked up from her phone with the exaggerated patience teenagers reserved for particularly dense adults. "Dad, she's not coming home? Like not coming home, coming home?" "What makes you say that?" "Because she asked me to pack more of her clothes and her good jewelry, and she wanted me to get her law books from the office upstairs." I sat down across from my daughter, really looking at her for the first time in weeks. When had she gotten so grown up? When had she started seeing things I was still trying to deny? "How do you feel about all this?" She shrugged, but I caught the uncertainty in her eyes. "It's whatever. Lots of my friends' parents are divorced." "We're not divorced. Yet." That one word hung in the air between us like a challenge. Madison went back to her phone, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she was holding herself just a little too carefully. "You know this isn't your fault, right?" "I know." But she said it too quickly, like she'd been practicing the response. My phone buzzed with a text from Leah. "Can you pick up Madison tomorrow? I have a work thing." A work thing. On Saturday. With Eli, no doubt, continuing their intensive case discussion. I was about to respond when another message appeared, this one from that same unknown number that had been sending cryptic updates. "Check your wife's social media. The work thing might interest you." Against my better judgment, I opened Facebook and navigated to Leah's profile. She'd always been careful about her online presence, keeping everything professional and family-friendly. But there, posted just an hour ago, was a photo of her and Eli at Romano's, the fancy Italian place 2 towns over. They were sharing a bottle of wine, leaning close together, and the caption read, "Celebrating new beginnings with good friends." New beginnings. The phrase hit me like a slap. Not working late, or case discussion, new beginnings. I showed the photo to Madison, who glanced at it and rolled her eyes. "Yeah, she's been posting stuff like that all week. It's embarrassing." "All week?" "Dad, she's like a teenager with her first boyfriend. It's gross." I scrolled through more recent posts. Leah at a coffee shop with Eli, Leah at a bookstore with Eli, Leah at what looked like a wine tasting event, Eli's arm around her waist, each post carefully crafted to look casual while broadcasting her new relationship status to anyone paying attention. "Your mother's always been thorough," I said, handing the phone back to Madison. "Is that what we're calling it?" Smart kid. Too smart for her own good, maybe. The next morning, I drove to Cassie's apartment complex to pick up Madison. It was one of those newer developments on the edge of town, all beige siding and generic landscaping, designed to look upscale without actually being upscale. Leah's car was in the parking lot, along with a silver sedan I recognized from my kitchen. Madison came out before I could decide whether to go to the door, moving with the quick steps of someone trying to escape an uncomfortable situation. "How's your mom?" I asked as she buckled her seatbelt. "Weird. She keeps asking me questions about you, like what you're doing, who you're talking to, whether you seem upset." "What do you tell her?" "That you're the same as always, boring and predictable." Thanks for the character reference. She also wanted to know if you've been going through her stuff or asking me about her friends. Interesting. Leah was worried about something. The question was what? "And what did you tell her about that?" "The truth. That you barely notice when I'm in the same room, let alone what Mom's doing." Another knife, twisted with teenage precision. But Madison wasn't entirely wrong. I had been distracted lately, focused on work and trying to ignore the growing distance in my marriage. Maybe if I'd been paying better attention, I would have seen this coming. We drove in silence for a while, past the familiar landmarks of a town that suddenly felt foreign. The hardware store where I'd bought supplies for 1,000 projects. The diner where Leah and I used to have breakfast on Sunday mornings. The high school where we'd met, fallen in love, and planned a future that was now dissolving like sugar in rain. "Dad?" Madison's voice was smaller than usual. "Yeah? Are you going to be okay?" The question caught me off guard. When had I become the one who needed reassurance? "I'll be fine, kiddo. Your old man's tougher than he looks." "Good, because Mom's different lately, like she's trying to prove something to everyone." "Different how?" Madison stared out the window, choosing her words carefully. "Like she's performing instead of just being herself. Does that make sense?" It made perfect sense. Leah had always been image-conscious, but lately she'd been curating her life like a museum exhibit. The social media posts, the public displays with Eli, even the way she'd orchestrated her departure from our house, everything calculated for maximum impact. "Your mom's going through some changes," I said. "People do that sometimes." "Are you going through changes too?" I thought about Rudy's advice, about fighting smart instead of fighting fair, about counterpunches and timing. "Maybe," I said. "Maybe I am." That afternoon, while Madison was at a friend's house, I decided to do some reconnaissance of my own. I drove past Romano's, the scene of Leah's New Beginnings celebration, then past the law office where she worked, a sleek glass building that looked out of place in our small town. Finally, I found myself parked across from Cassie's apartment complex, watching for signs of activity. I didn't have to wait long. Eli emerged from the building, checking his phone and looking pleased with himself. He climbed into his silver sedan and drove off, probably heading back to whatever life he'd put on hold to play house with my wife. My phone buzzed. Another message from my mysterious correspondent. "Interesting choice of parking spots. See anything educational?" I looked around the parking lot, wondering who was watching me watch them. The whole situation was starting to feel like a game where I didn't know the rules or even who the other players were. But I was learning. And as Rudy had taught me, learning your opponent's patterns was the first step toward landing an effective counterpunch. I drove home, past Mrs. Greeley's house, where she was conveniently gardening again, past the construction sites where my reputation was slowly crumbling, past all the familiar places that no longer felt quite like home. Time to stop playing defense, I decided. Time to see what happened when the predictable, boring husband started changing the rules of the game. Sunday morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was in the garage pretending to organize my tools while actually plotting my next move when Cassie's car pulled into my driveway. She climbed out wearing designer jeans and a nervous smile, looking like she'd rather be getting a root canal. "Hey, stranger," she said, hovering near the garage entrance like she wasn't sure she was welcome. "Cassie, this is a surprise. I was hoping we could talk about Leah and everything that's happening." I set down the wrench I'd been holding and really looked at her. Cassie had always been attractive in that high-maintenance way some women perfected, but today she looked tired. Her makeup couldn't quite hide the stress lines around her eyes. "Come on in. Want some coffee?" We sat at my kitchen table, the same one where Leah and I had our last real conversation. Cassie wrapped her hands around her mug like she was trying to absorb its warmth. "This is all such a mess," she said. "Which part?" The part where my wife moved in with you, or the part where she's posting couple photos with her colleague? Cassie winced. She's hurting too, you know. This isn't easy for anyone. Right. Starting a new relationship while you're still married is always challenging. It's not like that. What's it like then? She stared into her coffee, gathering her thoughts. Leah feels trapped, like she's been playing a role for so long that she forgot who she really is. And who is she really? Someone with ambition, someone who wants more than... She gestured vaguely around my kitchen. More than this. More than me. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. We sat in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Outside, I could hear Mrs. Greeley's lawnmower. Probably the third time this week she'd found an excuse to work in her yard where she could monitor the ongoing drama next door. What do you want, Cassie? I want you to make this easy for her. Don't fight the separation. Don't make her feel guilty for wanting something different. Make it easy. I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. Like when you made it easy for her to meet Eli at hotels by providing alibis about girls' nights. Her cheeks flushed, but she didn't deny it. Sometimes people need space to figure things out. And sometimes people need friends who tell them the truth instead of enabling their worst impulses. That's not fair. Fair. I laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. You know what's not fair. Building a life with someone for 17 years, then having them decide you're not good enough anymore while their best friend helps them sneak around behind your back. Cassie stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I should go? Probably should. Give Leah my regards. Tell her I'm making things as easy as possible. After she left, I sat alone in my kitchen, thinking about the conversation. Cassie had come here for a reason, and it wasn't just to ask me to play nice. She was nervous about something, worried about how I might react to whatever was coming next. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. Mom wants to know if she can get the rest of her stuff while you're not home. I responded, tell her she's welcome anytime. It's still her house, too. Then I sent another message. But I'll be here. No reason to sneak around. An hour later, Leah arrived with Eli in tow, like she needed backup to collect her belongings from her own home. They pulled into the driveway in his silver sedan, and I watched from the kitchen window as they sat in the car for several minutes, apparently discussing strategy. I opened the front door before they could knock. Come on in. Mi casa es su casa, right? Leah looked uncomfortable, but Eli stepped forward with that confident smile I was learning to despise. We don't want to cause any trouble, he said. No trouble at all. I was just doing some cleaning myself. Amazing what you find when you really start paying attention to the details. I led them into the living room, where I'd spread out several months' worth of bank statements, credit card bills, and receipts across the coffee table. Not accusing, just organizing, getting my financial house in order. Leah's eyes widened when she saw the paperwork. What is all this? Just making sure I understand our expenses. You know, preparing for whatever comes next. I picked up a hotel receipt. Romano's is expensive, but I guess you have to pay for quality. Eli shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should come back another time. No need. Take whatever you want, Leah. I'm not going to stop you. She moved through the house like a ghost, gathering clothes and personal items while Eli waited in the living room, trying not to look at the financial evidence of their affair spread across my coffee table. Nice car, I said to him. Lease or purchase? Purchase. Smart. I always buy used myself, but then I'm not a lawyer. Different priorities, I guess. I'm not a lawyer either. I'm a paralegal. Interesting. Like Leah used to be. She's a lawyer now. Passed the bar last year. Right. Big celebration. I remember. I picked up another receipt. Looks like you two have been celebrating a lot of milestones together. Eli's confidence was starting to crack around the edges. Look, I know this is awkward. Awkward. I set down the receipt and looked at him directly. You know what's awkward? Having a stranger in my house? Acting like he belongs here. But I guess we all have different definitions of appropriate behavior. Leah appeared at the top of the stairs, carrying a suitcase. I think I have everything I need for now. Take your time. No rush. She came downstairs, avoiding eye contact. I'll call about getting the rest later. Or you could just take it all now. Save yourself another trip. I don't need everything. Just the essentials. Right. The essentials. I gestured toward Eli. I can see you've got those covered. They left quickly after that, Eli practically pushing Leah toward the door. I watched from the window as they sat in his car again, having what looked like an intense conversation. Then they drove away, leaving me alone with my paperwork and my thoughts. My phone buzzed. The mysterious correspondent again. Nicely played, but they're planning something bigger. Check Leah's work schedule this week. I was getting tired of cryptic messages from someone who seemed to know more about my life than I did, but curiosity won out over annoyance. I called Leah's office using my most concerned husband voice. "Hi, this is Tom Johnson, Leah's husband. She left her medication at home and I wanted to drop it off. Is she in today?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, but Leah took the whole week off. She said it was for personal reasons." "Oh, that's right. I forgot. Thanks anyway." A week off work that she hadn't mentioned to me. More celebrations with Eli, probably, or maybe something else entirely. I spent the afternoon at Rudy's gym, working through my frustration on the heavy bag. The old trainer watched me throw combinations with increasing intensity, occasionally offering corrections to my form. "You're getting stronger," he observed. "But strength without strategy is just violence." "What kind of strategy are we talking about?" "The kind that makes your opponent defeat themselves. You don't have to knock them out if you can make them stumble." "And how do I do that?" Rudy grinned, showing teeth that had survived 40 years of training fighters. "You give them exactly what they think they want, then let them discover what it really costs." That evening, I made a decision. Instead of sitting home feeling sorry for myself, I was going to start living my life on my own terms. I called Ray and told him to schedule the Henderson kitchen renovation for this week, regardless of their concerns about stability. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Never been more sure of anything?" Then I called Madison. "Want to go out for dinner? Someplace nice?" "Like where?" "How about Romano's? I hear they have excellent wine." Madison was quiet for a moment. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm fine, kiddo. Better than fine. I'm finally starting to pay attention." We drove to Romano's, the scene of Leah's New Beginning celebration. I requested a table near the window where anyone driving by could see us. Madison ordered pasta. I ordered the most expensive steak on the menu, and we talked about everything except the obvious. "This is weird," Madison said, looking around the restaurant. "Good weird or bad weird?" "I don't know yet. Different weird." "Different can be good." "Can it?" "We're about to find out." Halfway through dinner, I spotted Cassie's car in the parking lot. Then Leah and Eli walked in, clearly expecting a quiet, romantic evening. Instead, they found me and Madison at the best table in the house, enjoying ourselves like we didn't have a care in the world. The hostess seated them across the room, but I could feel Leah watching us. I raised my wine glass in her direction, a silent toast to new beginnings all around. Madison noticed the gesture and turned to see what I was looking at. When she spotted her mother, she waved enthusiastically. "Should we go say hi?" she asked. "Let's let them enjoy their dinner. We're having our own celebration." "What are we celebrating?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and realized she was the one good thing that had come out of my marriage. Whatever happened next, I wasn't going to let Leah's choices destroy my relationship with Madison. "We're celebrating us," I said, "and the fact that some things are worth fighting for." Madison smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her in weeks. Across the room, Leah was having what appeared to be a tense conversation with Eli, both of them glancing in our direction. Let them wonder, I thought. Let them try to figure out what the boring, predictable husband was planning next. Because the truth was, I was just getting started. The Henderson kitchen renovation became my masterpiece of psychological warfare. Instead of the subdued, professional approach I usually took, I turned their project into a showcase. I arrived each morning at exactly 7:30, radio playing classic rock loud enough to announce my presence to the entire neighborhood. By lunch, I'd made more progress than most contractors accomplished in a full day. Word spread quickly through Cedar Bluff's gossip network. Tom Johnson wasn't falling apart after all. If anything, he seemed energized, focused, almost cheerful. The narrative was shifting, and I could see it in people's faces when I walked into Murphy's Hardware or grabbed coffee at the diner. "Looking good, Tom," Mrs. Henderson said on Wednesday morning, admiring the cabinet installation. "Best work you've ever done for us." "Thanks. I'm feeling inspired lately." "Good for you. Sometimes change brings out the best in people." Change. Everyone in town was watching to see how I'd handle the changes in my life. Time to give them something worth watching. That afternoon, I got a call from Madison's school. She'd been in a fight with another student and needed to be picked up immediately. I found her sitting in the principal's office, her knuckles scraped and her attitude defiant. "What happened?" I asked as we walked to my truck. "Ashley Morrison said some things about you and Mom. I told her to shut up. She didn't." "What kind of things?" Madison kicked at a loose stone in the parking lot. "That you were pathetic for not seeing what everyone else knew. That Mom finally found a real man. That you were probably going to have a breakdown and lose your business." The Morrison family. Ray had mentioned they'd put their project on hold, worried about my stability. Apparently, they'd been sharing their concerns with their daughter. So you hit her? So I hit her. I stopped walking and looked at my daughter. Her jaw was set in a stubborn line that reminded me painfully of her mother, but her eyes held something I recognized from my own mirror lately, the look of someone who'd had enough. You know fighting doesn't solve problems, right? Sometimes it makes people shut up. True, but there are smarter ways to handle situations like this. Like what? Like making people realize they don't know as much as they think they do. That evening, I made a phone call to Dave Morrison. Dave, it's Tom Johnson. I heard there was some trouble between the girls today. Yeah, sorry about that. Kids, you know? Absolutely. Kids repeat what they hear at home. Speaking of which, I wanted to let you know I'm ready to start your deck project whenever you are. Silence on the other end. I thought we were going to wait. Wait for what? For me to have the breakdown your family's been predicting? Sorry to disappoint, but I'm booked solid through the fall. If you want to wait for someone else, that's your choice. Now hold on, Tom. I never said anything about a breakdown. Course not. Just like your daughter never said anything about my wife finding a real man. Kids make these things up, right? More silence. Look, maybe we got our wires crossed. Maybe. Tell you what, I'll keep your slot open through Friday. After that, I'll assume you found someone else. I hung up before he could respond. Within an hour, Dave Morrison called back to confirm he wanted to proceed with the original timeline. Madison was doing homework at the kitchen table when I got off the phone. The Morrison project is back on, I told her. She looked up from her textbook. How'd you manage that? I reminded Mr. Morrison that actions have consequences, just like fighting at school. Am I in trouble? You're grounded for a week. Fighting is not acceptable, even when people deserve it. That's not fair. Fair would be Ashley Morrison learning to keep her family's gossip to herself. But life isn't always fair. Sometimes you have to make your own justice. Is that what you're doing with Mom? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, you're different lately. Not sad different. More like dangerous different. Dangerous. Interesting word choice from a 16-year-old. Your mother made her choices, I said carefully. Now she gets to live with the consequences. What kind of consequences? The kind that teach people to be more careful about what they wish for. My phone buzzed with a text from Leah. Madison told me about the fight. We need to discuss her behavior. I showed the message to Madison. Want to discuss your behavior with your mother? Not really. She's too busy discussing other things with Eli. Fair point. I typed back. Madison's handled. She's learning that actions have consequences. Good lesson for everyone. Leah's response was immediate. What's that supposed to mean? Whatever you want it to mean? Friday afternoon brought another surprise visitor. Eli showed up at the Henderson job site, looking nervous and overdressed for a construction zone. Got a minute? He asked. I set down my drill and wiped my hands on a rag. Sure. What's on your mind? This situation with Leah, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Did we? I wasn't aware we were trying to get on any foot at all. He shifted uncomfortably, trying to find solid ground in a conversation that kept moving under him. Look, I know this is awkward, but we're all adults here. Are we? Because sneaking around behind someone's back seems pretty juvenile to me. It wasn't like that. What was it like? Eli looked around the construction site like he was searching for backup that wasn't coming. Leah and I have history. We dated in college before she met you. I know. You know. Small town, Eli. People talk. Leah mentioned her college boyfriend who broke her heart by choosing law school over their relationship. That was you, right? His face went pale. She told you that? Years ago. Ancient history, or so I thought. I picked up my drill again, testing its weight in my hand. Funny how ancient history has a way of repeating itself. What do you mean? I mean, you chose your career over Leah once before. What makes you think this time will be different? Because I'm older now, more mature. Mature enough to pursue a married woman? She's separated. She's living at her friend's house while she figures out what she wants. That's not the same thing as separated. Eli straightened his shoulders, trying to project confidence he clearly didn't feel. She knows what she wants. Does she? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like she's trying to relive her college years with the guy who dumped her the first time around. That's not... Here's the thing about second chances, Eli. Sometimes people get them because they've learned from their mistakes. And sometimes they get them because someone wants to prove they were worth choosing the first time. I started the drill, letting its whine fill the silence between us. When I turned it off, Eli was staring at me with something that might have been respect or might have been fear. "Which one do you think this is?" I asked. He didn't answer, just turned and walked back to his car. I watched him drive away, then returned to my work, whistling along with the radio. That evening, I took Madison out for pizza at Tony's, the local place where half the town gathered on Friday nights. We'd barely ordered when Cassie walked in with Leah and Eli, clearly not expecting to see us there. "Small town," I said to Madison. "Everyone ends up in the same places eventually." Leah approached our table, leaving Eli and Cassie at the counter. She looked tired, stressed, like someone carrying more weight than she could handle. "Can we talk?" she asked. "We are talking. Privately." I looked at Madison, who shrugged. "I'll go play the arcade games." After she left, Leah sat down across from me, in the same spot where we'd shared countless family dinners over the years. "Eli said you two had an interesting conversation today." "Did he? What did he tell you?" "That you were trying to get inside his head, make him doubt himself." "Was I successful?" She studied my face like she was seeing me for the first time. "What's happened to you?" "What do you mean?" "You're different, not the man I married. The man you married was boring and predictable, remember? Maybe different is an improvement. This isn't you, Tom. How would you know? You've been too busy with your new beginning to pay attention to who I am now." She glanced back at Eli, who was watching our conversation with obvious anxiety. "He's a good man." "I'm sure he is. Question is, what kind of woman does that make you?" "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're still married to me, Leah. Whatever you're doing with him, you're doing it while you're still my wife." "We're separated." "Are we?" "Because I don't remember signing any papers. I don't remember agreeing to any terms. I remember you moving in with your friend and posting couple photos on social media, but I don't remember us actually discussing separation." She looked down at her hands, and I noticed she was still wearing her wedding ring. "I thought you understood." "I understand plenty. I understand that you decided you wanted something different, and you went after it without caring about the collateral damage. I understand that you've been using Cassie as your alibi and Eli as your escape route. What I don't understand is why you think I should make it easy for you. Because we have a daughter together. Because we used to love each other. Because this doesn't have to be ugly. Doesn't it? You made it ugly when you started lying to me. You made it ugly when you brought him into our house. You made it ugly when you turned our marriage into a public spectacle." Tears started forming in her eyes, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with 17 years ago. Then I remembered the hotel receipts, the secret texts, the way she'd looked at me like I was an obstacle to her happiness. "What do you want from me?" she asked. "I want you to stop pretending this is about finding yourself or growing as a person. I want you to admit that you're having an affair with your college boyfriend because it makes you feel young and desirable again." "That's not—" "I want you to admit that you've been planning this for months, maybe longer. I want you to admit that you never intended to work on our marriage." She wiped her eyes with a napkin, smearing her mascara. "And then what?" "Then we stop lying to each other and start dealing with reality." "What reality?" I leaned forward, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "The reality that you chose him over me, and now you get to live with that choice. All of it. The good parts and the parts you haven't thought about yet." "What parts haven't I thought about?" "Ask Eli. He's had 17 years to think about the woman who got away. Now he gets to find out if the fantasy matches the reality." I stood up and called Madison over. "We're leaving." "But we just ordered—" "We'll get pizza somewhere else. This place just lost its appeal." As we walked toward the exit, I heard Leah call my name. I turned back to see her sitting alone at our table, Eli and Cassie still at the counter, all of them looking lost and uncertain. "Tom," she said, "I never meant for it to happen like this." "I know," I said. "That's what makes it worse." Outside, Madison was quiet until we got to the truck. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" she asked. "Probably. Are you okay with that?" I started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, past the window where I could see Leah still sitting alone at our table. "I'm okay with a lot of things I never thought I'd be okay with," I said. "Turns out people are more adaptable than they realize." "Is that good or bad?" "Depends on what you're adapting to." We drove home through the quiet streets of Cedar Bluff, past all the familiar places that were slowly becoming memories. But for the first time in months, I wasn't looking backward. I was looking ahead, planning my next move in a game where I was finally starting to understand the rules. And the rules, I was learning, were simpler than I'd thought. You played to win, or you didn't play at all. The call came at 6 in the morning on a Tuesday. Leah's voice was sharp with panic, cutting through my coffee-induced fog like a blade. "Tom, I need your help." I set down my mug and walked to the kitchen window, where Mrs. Greeley was already at her post, watering plants that couldn't possibly need that much attention. What kind of help? It's about work. There's been a complaint filed against me with the State Bar Association. What kind of complaint? Someone's claiming I misrepresented my credentials to clients, that I've been practicing law without proper certification. I felt a smile tug at the corner of my mouth. Have you? Of course not. I passed the bar exam fair and square. But the complaint is detailed, specific. Someone's been digging into my background, my education, my work history. Sounds serious. It is serious. If the investigation finds any merit to the claims, I could lose my license. My career would be over. That would be unfortunate. Silence on the other end, then. You don't sound surprised. Should I be? You've made a lot of enemies lately, Leah. People talk in small towns. This isn't gossip, Tom. This is someone with access to official records, someone who knows how to work the system. Someone like a contractor who's dealt with building permits and licensing boards for 15 years. Another silence, longer this time. Did you file that complaint? Why would I do something like that? To hurt me, to get revenge for Eli. Leah, I'm a simple construction worker, remember? Boring and predictable. I wouldn't know how to navigate state bureaucracy even if I wanted to. But even as I said it, I was thinking about the hours I'd spent online over the past 2 weeks, researching professional licensing requirements, complaint procedures, and the specific documentation needed to challenge someone's credentials. Amazing what you could learn when you put your mind to it. Someone's targeting me, she said. And if it's not you, maybe it's someone who thinks you've been cutting corners. Maybe it's a client who feels misrepresented. Maybe it's just bad luck. I don't believe in bad luck. Neither do I. I believe in consequences. After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee and watching Mrs. Greeley pretend to garden while actually monitoring my house for signs of drama. My phone buzzed with a text from the mysterious correspondent who'd been providing commentary on my marriage's collapse. Nicely done, but this is just the opening move. I was getting tired of cryptic messages from someone who clearly knew more about my situation than they were letting on. Time to force their hand. I typed back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. Someone who's been watching this town's dirty laundry for a long time. Someone who thinks it's time for some spring cleaning. What do you want? Justice and entertainment. Not necessarily in that order. Meet me, tonight. Murphy's Bar, 9 o'clock. Not yet, but soon. First, let's see how Leah handles her legal troubles. I stared at that message, trying to piece together the puzzle. Someone with inside knowledge of my marriage, access to information about Leah's background, and a clear agenda for stirring up trouble. The list of possibilities was shorter than I'd initially thought. That afternoon, while finishing the Henderson kitchen, I got a call from Madison's school. She'd been caught filming other students without permission and posting the videos online with sarcastic commentary. The principal wanted to see me immediately. "It's not a big deal," Madison said as we drove home from her suspension meeting. "Everyone does it. Everyone doesn't get suspended for it. Everyone doesn't have parents whose drama is the hottest gossip in town." I pulled over and turned to look at my daughter. What's that supposed to mean? It means Ashley Morrison's been posting videos about our family, about Mom and Eli, about you acting weird, about how pathetic our whole situation is. So I posted some videos about her family. What kind of videos? Madison pulled out her phone and showed me a compilation she'd created. Ashley Morrison at school, picking her nose, Ashley's boyfriend flirting with another girl, Ashley's mother at the grocery store, arguing loudly with a cashier about expired coupons. "Madison, this is revenge?" "Yeah, I learned from the best." The accusation hit harder than I'd expected. "I'm not seeking revenge." "Right. You're seeking justice. There's a difference, right?" "There is a difference." "What difference?" I stared at my daughter's phone, at the cruel little videos she'd created to hurt the people who'd hurt her, and realized she was right. There wasn't much difference at all. "Take the videos down," I said. "Why? They're just showing the truth about people, like you're doing with Mom." "Take them down, Madison, now." She deleted the videos with exaggerated reluctance, but I could see relief in her eyes. She'd been testing me, seeing if I'd approve of her following my example. The fact that I'd drawn the line seemed to comfort her more than disappoint her. That evening, I drove to Murphy's Bar, hoping to finally meet my mysterious correspondent. The place was half empty, just the usual collection of locals nursing drinks and watching sports on the ancient television above the bar. I ordered a drink and waited, studying every face in the room. At 9:15, my phone buzzed. Look behind you. I turned to see Cassie sitting in a corner booth, raising her glass in a mock toast. She'd been there the whole time, watching me wait for her to reveal herself. I walked over and sat down across from her. You've been having fun with this, haven't you? More fun than I've had in years. Why? Because you fired me, Tom. 3 years ago, you fired me for being late and making personal calls, and you never gave me a chance to explain what was going on in my life. What was going on? My mother was in her final days. I was spending every free moment at the hospital, handling doctors, insurance companies, and doing everything I could to keep her comfortable. But you didn't ask. You just assumed I was unreliable and let me go. I remembered the firing, but not the details she was describing. You never told me about your mother. I tried. You said personal problems couldn't interfere with work, so I kept my personal problems to myself, and you fired me anyway. Cassie, do you know what it's like in a town this size when Tom Johnson fires you? Do you know how hard it is to find other work when the most respected contractor in town tells people you're unreliable? I didn't, but I was starting to understand. So you decided to get even. I decided to watch and wait. And when Leah started complaining about feeling trapped in her marriage, I saw an opportunity. You encouraged the affair. I facilitated it. Leah wanted excitement, Eli wanted a second chance, and you wanted to keep pretending everything was fine. I just helped everyone get what they thought they wanted. And the complaint against Leah's license? Cassie smiled, and for the first time, I saw the calculation behind her friendly facade. That wasn't me. That was all you. I just provided some of the documentation. What documentation? Leah's college transcripts, her employment history, little details about her background that might interest a licensing board. The pieces clicked together. Oh, you've been feeding information to both sides. I've been stirring the pot, watching you all tear each other apart while I sit back and enjoy the show. What about Madison? She's just a kid. Madison's learning valuable lessons about trust and loyalty. Better to learn them young. I stared at Cassie across the table, realizing I'd been played by an expert. She'd orchestrated the entire situation, manipulating all of us like pieces on a chessboard. What do you want now? I want to see how this ends. I want to watch Leah realize that her college sweetheart isn't the man she remembered. I want to watch Eli figure out that the woman he's been pining for is someone else's wife with someone else's baggage. And I want to watch you realize that your boring, predictable life wasn't so bad after all. And if I expose you, tell them what you've been doing? Who would believe you? The bitter husband making accusations against his wife's best friend. Please. She finished her drink and stood up. Besides, you're having too much fun playing the villain to give it up now. You've discovered you're good at it. After she left, I sat alone in Murphy's bar, nursing my drink and thinking about the conversation. Cassie was right about one thing. I had been enjoying the game, the strategy, the feeling of finally being in control of something. But Madison's words echoed in my head. I learned from the best. Was that the example I wanted to set? Was that the man I wanted to become? My phone buzzed with a text from Leah. The bar complaint was dismissed. Insufficient evidence. But Tom, if you're behind this, I typed back, glad to hear it was resolved. See you at Madison's school play next week. You're still coming to that? Wouldn't miss it. We're still her parents, whatever else is happening. Thank you. I finished my drink and drove home through the quiet streets of Cedar Bluff, past all the houses where families were presumably living normal, uncomplicated lives. At least, that's what I'd thought about my own life just a few months ago. At home, Madison was doing homework at the kitchen table, surrounded by textbooks and the controlled chaos of teenage academia. How was your mysterious meeting? She asked without looking up. Educational. How did you know it was mysterious? Because you've been getting weird texts for weeks, and tonight you actually went out to meet someone. Elementary deduction. Smart kid. Too smart for her own good. Madison, about what happened at school today. I know. I was wrong. Fighting back doesn't make me better than them. Sometimes it does. But you have to be smart about how you fight back. She looked up from her homework. Are you being smart about how you're fighting back? I'm trying to be. Good, because Mom called me today, crying. She sounded scared. Scared of what? Scared that she's made a mistake. Scared that Eli isn't who she thought he was. Scared that she's ruined everything for nothing. I sat down across from my daughter, looking at her the way I'd been looking at everything lately, really seeing instead of just glancing. What do you think she should do? I think she should figure out what she actually wants instead of just running away from what she doesn't want. That's good advice. Yeah, well, I learned from the best. This time she was smiling when she said it. The school auditorium was packed for Madison's drama class performance of Our Town, which felt ironically appropriate given the circumstances. I arrived early and claimed an aisle seat in the middle section, close enough to see Madison clearly but far enough from the stage to avoid the front row parents with their professional cameras and competitive enthusiasm. Leah and Eli arrived 10 minutes later, scanning the crowd before settling into seats 3 rows behind me. I could feel their presence like a weight on my shoulders, but I kept my attention focused on the stage where students were adjusting props and testing microphones. "Tom." Leah's voice was soft, uncertain. She'd moved to the empty seat beside me while Eli remained in their original row. "Thank you for coming." "She's my daughter, too." "I know, things have been complicated lately." "Have they?" She studied my profile, trying to read something in my expression. "The bar complaint really scared me, made me realize how much I have to lose." "Career-wise, you mean?" "Everything-wise." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Eli and I have been talking." "About?" "About whether we're doing this for the right reasons." I turned to look at her directly for the first time. She looked tired, older somehow, like someone who'd been carrying more weight than she could handle. "What reasons would those be?" I thought I wanted excitement, adventure, a chance to feel young again. She glanced back at Eli, who was pretending to read the program while obviously listening to our conversation. But maybe what I really wanted was to feel important to someone again. "You've always been important." "Have I? When was the last time you really looked at me, Tom? Not just glanced up from your work or your phone, but really looked at me like you used to?" The question hit harder than I'd expected because I couldn't answer it. Somewhere in the routine of 17 years, I'd stopped seeing my wife as a person and started seeing her as a fixture. Reliable, predictable, always there when I needed her, but rarely requiring my full attention. "That's not an excuse for what you did." "I know, but it's an explanation." The lights dimmed, saving me from having to respond. Madison appeared on stage as Emily Webb, and for the next 2 hours, I watched my daughter perform a story about love, loss, and the precious ordinariness of everyday life. During intermission, Eli approached while Leah was in the bathroom. "She's having second thoughts," he said without preamble. "About?" "About us, about leaving you, about everything." "And how do you feel about that?" He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture I was learning meant he was nervous. "Honestly, relieved." "Relieved?" "This whole situation has been more complicated than I expected. Leah's not the same person she was in college. She's got history, responsibilities, a whole life I'm not part of. She's got a husband." "Yeah, she does." He looked toward the bathroom where Leah had disappeared. I think I was in love with a memory, not the actual person. "So what are you going to do about it?" "I don't know. What are you going to do about it?" Before I could answer, Leah returned, and the lights dimmed for the second act. But Eli's question stayed with me through the rest of the performance. What was I going to do about it? After the play, we gathered outside the auditorium with the other families, congratulating the students and taking pictures. Madison glowed with the satisfaction of a job well done, accepting compliments from friends and relatives with teenage grace. "You were amazing," I told her, pulling her into a hug. "Thanks, Dad. Did you like the play?" "I did. Made me think about a lot of things." "Like what?" "Like how easy it is to take everyday miracles for granted." Madison looked between me and her mother, who was standing awkwardly with Eli a few feet away. "Are you guys going to figure things out?" "We're going to try." "Good. Because this whole situation is exhausting." After most of the crowd had dispersed, the 4 of us stood in the parking lot like actors who'd forgotten their lines. Finally, Leah broke the silence. "Madison, could you ride home with Eli? Your dad and I need to talk." "Are you going to fight?" "No," I said. "We're going to have a conversation, like adults." Madison looked skeptical, but climbed into Eli's car. They drove away, leaving Leah and me alone under the parking lot lights. "Want to walk?" she asked. We strolled through the quiet neighborhoods surrounding the school, past houses where families were settling in for the evening, past the life we'd built together over 17 years. "I made a mistake," Leah said finally. "Which part was the mistake?" "All of it. The affair, the lying, the way I handled everything. But mostly, I made a mistake in thinking that changing my external circumstances would fix what was wrong inside." "What was wrong inside?" "I felt invisible, like I'd become the supporting character in everyone else's story instead of the protagonist of my own." "So you decided to write yourself a new story." "I decided to blow up the old story without thinking about who else might get hurt in the explosion." We walked in silence for a while, past the elementary school where Madison had taken her first steps toward independence, past the park where we'd had family picnics and birthday parties and all the small celebrations that make up a shared life. "What do you want now?" I asked. "I want to come home. I want to try to rebuild what we had." "What we had is gone, Leah. You can't undo the past few months." "I know, but maybe we can build something new, something better. What about Eli?" "Eli was a fantasy. You're real." I stopped walking and turned to face her. "Real and boring. Real and predictable. Real and steady. Real and loyal. Real and willing to show up every day even when it's hard. Even when your wife is having an affair." She winced. "Especially then." We stood there in the middle of the sidewalk, two people who'd shared half their lives trying to figure out if they wanted to share the other half. "I hurt you," she said. "I know that, and I know trust isn't something you can just decide to give back." "No, it isn't. But is it something you might be willing to work toward?" I thought about Cassie's manipulation, about the games we'd all been playing, about Madison learning to fight dirty, because that's what she'd seen from the adults in her life. "On one condition," I said. "What?" "No more games. No more manipulation. No more trying to manage each other's feelings or control the narrative. If we're going to try this, we try it honestly." "Agreed. And Cassie's out of our lives. Permanently." Leah looked surprised. "Why?" "Because she's been playing all of us against each other for months. The affair, the bar complaint, probably half the drama in this town. She's had her fingers in all of it." "That's impossible. Cassie's been my friend since college." "Cassie's been your friend since college and my enemy since I fired her 3 years ago. She's been using your marriage as her personal revenge fantasy." I told her about the meeting at Murphy's bar, about Cassie's admission that she'd orchestrated the affair as payback for being fired. Leah listened with growing horror, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. "She knew about Eli before I even mentioned him," Leah said slowly. "She's the one who suggested I look him up on social media. She's the one who provided alibis for your hotel meetings. She's the one who encouraged me to post those photos on Facebook. She's been playing puppet master while we tore each other apart." Leah sat down heavily on a nearby bench, the weight of realization settling on her shoulders. "I've been such a fool." "We've all been fools. The question is what we do about it now." "What do you want to do about it?" I sat down beside her, close enough to smell her familiar perfume, close enough to remember why I'd fallen in love with her 17 years ago. "I want to go home," I said. "I want to have dinner with my wife and daughter. I want to watch terrible movies and argue about what color to paint the bathroom and complain about the neighbors. You want ordinary. I want real." She leaned against my shoulder, and for the first time in months, it felt natural instead of forced. "Can we really come back from this?" she asked. "I don't know, but I think we owe it to ourselves to try." "What about Madison?" "Madison's been waiting for us to stop acting like teenagers and start acting like parents. I think she'll be relieved." We sat on that bench for another hour, talking through the practical details of rebuilding a marriage that had nearly imploded. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be quick, but for the first time in months, it felt possible. When we finally walked home together, Mrs. Greeley was at her window, probably wondering why the neighborhood's most entertaining drama seemed to be winding down just when it was getting good. Madison was waiting in the kitchen, doing homework, and pretending not to watch for our return. "So?" she asked as we walked in together. "So your mother's coming home," I said. "Are you back together?" "We're working on it." Madison nodded, satisfied. "Good. This house has been way too quiet lately." Later that night, after Leah had moved her things back into our bedroom and Madison had gone to sleep, we sat at our kitchen table, the same table where this whole mess had started months earlier. "What happens to Eli?" Leah asked. "Eli goes back to his life, hopefully having learned something about the difference between fantasy and reality." "And Cassie?" "Cassie discovers that actions have consequences. Her little revenge game is over." "How?" I smiled, thinking about the information I'd gathered over the past few weeks, the documentation of Cassie's manipulation that I'd been saving for the right moment. "Let's just say the good people of Cedar Bluff are about to learn some interesting things about their favorite gossip coordinator. Tom, relax. Nothing illegal, nothing cruel, just the truth about who's been stirring the pot around here. And then? And then we focus on us, on rebuilding what we had, or building something new. Something better? Something real." Outside, Cedar Bluff settled into its normal nighttime quiet, the kind of peaceful ordinariness that I'd learned not to take for granted. Inside our house, my family was back together, damaged but not broken, ready to start the long work of healing. It wasn't the ending any of us had expected, but it was the ending we'd earned, and sometimes that's the best you can hope for.